Welcome to Vault of the Supernatural. And today we are with Mr. Mark Watson, the author of Crybaby. And this is our first show here where we are talking about. And hold on, I got to mute my mic over here. Crybaby. And this is our first show here where we are talking about. Mark Watt. And hold on, I got to mute my mic over here. There we go. All right, Mark, can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, perfect. All right. Again, sorry, folks. This is only the second time I've done this, so some technical difficulties there. But welcome, everyone, to Vault of the Supernatural. This is our first weekly show, Readers Club, and today we are with Mr. Mark Watson, the author of Crybaby, which, friends, it is available on Amazon. It's an awesome read, really great book to read. Discusses and goes into great detail, which I never knew was even possible, about rogue elephants. Uh, did not even know that that is something that could even occur. And so, yeah, we have Mr. Mark Watson here, terrific writer, great characters from the book. I'm going to try to remember her name, but I like her character, Ahana. Am I right? Ahana's
Ahana, yeah.
Yeah, Ahana. Very interesting characters. And then the one that kind of reminds me of, I don't know, just reminds me of Joel's. Rahul, is that his name? The leader of the village, and
Yep.
also the part-time crook, I should say. He leads a gang of thieves. Well, when he builds that watchtower, it reminds me of the guy from Jaws. Do you remember?
Yep.
I can't think of the. It just reminded me of that show, and I thought it was really interesting. I said, "Oh, there's the guy from Jaws," but in this case, he's not as nice as the sheriff, and he's crooked than sin, and he's devious. He's the opposite of his brother, who was the sheriff that was killed by Crybaby. But I did have some questions because I really enjoy the book. I'm almost done it, by the way. I've been really steadily reading it every night. I didn't read anything yesterday, but I will probably today, I'm sure.
Okay.
I know it takes place in a village. I know it's in a rainforest. Um, but I didn't gather too much what country or anything that was based on it, if I may ask.
It's supposed to be India. It's supposed to be a
India.
little village. It's supposed to be a little village in Kerala, which is the area in India that has the most elephants, the most wild elephants. But I didn't really want to specify because obviously I'm not Indian, so I didn't want to sort of give the impression that I knew everything about the place or that I was writing like an Indian author. I wanted it very much to exist as a story, rather than me saying, okay, this is what happens in a specific area of India. I mean, it's very, very good that you've spotted the things it has in common with Jaws, because I tried to follow pretty much exactly the same beats as Jaws. I'm a huge fan of Jaws, and this is kind of like my version of it. You've got the three main characters, the protagonists. The third act is very similar, where they go into the jungle to hunt Crybaby, and also, I don't know if you noticed, I'll give you a little spoiler, but the names of the victims, of the first victims of Crybaby, are the same as the two first victims in Jaws, Jack and Christine. So Chrissy and Jack.
Yes. I do remember them. Yes. Jack and Christine from the first Jaws. Very
Yep.
good symbolism there, in a sense, really. Yeah, I like that connection. Yeah.
And the thing is, I always wanted to write a shark book. I've always loved Jaws, and I've always wanted to write my own shark story. But whenever I've, let's say, researched great white sharks, whenever I've watched films of great white sharks, everything else like that, I've always found it very difficult to, let's say, kill the shark. feasibly. I don't even think they manage it in Jaws, but Jaws is the best they come to sort of feasibly killing a great white shark. Every other film I've seen, every other book I've read, the way they deal with the shark at the end is, frankly, is a load of rubbish, you know. So I wanted to do something a bit
You think
different.
the way they dealt with Jaws at the end was a lot of rubbish?
Technically, it is, you know. If you shot a scuba diving tank, it wouldn't explode like that, you know, and kill the
Okay,
shark.
okay.
But it works. It works in Jaws. Even if you look at Jaws 2, Jaws 3, you know, the way they kill the sharks in those, they're always very, very poor, you know. You're not really going to kill a shark in the wild, you know. Like I saw one film, I think it's called. I'm not sure actually. Now I come to think of it, it's one where a girl is surfing and there's a shark. She gets stuck on a little bit of an island, and there's a shark between her and the shore. And in the end, the shark kind of swims itself into some scaffolding that's sticking out, you know, and impales itself. And you think, well, when would that ever happen? You know, so I get this very. I always thought, you know, I'd love to do a monster book, but and I'd love to do a shark book because it was the film that had a big hit on me when I was a kid. But then I don't
Yeah.
want to do something beyond the realms of feasibility. You know what I mean? I'd like to keep it quite real. So then when I looked into other animals, other dangerous animals, and you see that one of the biggest killers of humans is elephants. Elephants kill maybe 500 up to 2,000 people a year. I think that's absolutely crazy.
Wow.
Sharks is about five. You know what I mean? Sharks kill about 5 people a year, maybe. So when you look at elephants, elephants are between the second and the 10th biggest killer of human beings in the world. So that's
Yeah.
why I decided to research it and see, you know, whether I could do something featuring a killer elephant. But then obviously you get into the fact that do I want to kill it? Is it really a monster, or you know, is it part of circumstance? You know, is it because a lot of the conflicts between elephants and humans are caused because of humans expanding into areas that were traditionally belonged to
Their
elephants. So,
territory. Their territory. Yeah. Yeah. No, I could see that. And then the interesting fact that I like about Crybaby um is it's a he, from what I understand. It's a he. The he was entertainment for the village children.
yeah,
And he was such a good animal to everything, but I think the way you described it, and I didn't catch it in the beginning. I had to go back and think about it. But the shaman is the one that possessed the elephant to go into rogue mode, um, because of what that nasty uh, um, thief did. You know, drugging him and killing him and everything. He was furious. But I also think, in a sense, yeah, the shaman did that, but I also feel that a part of it is Crybaby too, because maybe they were retaliating, maybe because they've been always um you know, I don't want to say chained, but like always giving service to others. Maybe they want to be more part of Mother Nature again, is what I gather too from it. That was my own little take. But I think it's a little bit of both. But I found it interesting because I didn't even know that elephants go rogue. But that really is not to be funny, that is a real thing that can happen.
well, the thing is, Bill, elephants, male elephants in particular, they go through when they go into like their mating season, and they start producing this hormone. They start producing all these testosterone, and it actually leaks out of a hole behind their ears. It's called must,
You
MUSTH.
mentioned that in the book, don't you?
Yeah, and when that happens to a male elephant, they have to chain them up. They have to chain them to a tree, and they have to be very, very careful because elephants during that particular time they get very aggressive. Male elephants, very aggressive.
Wow.
So during that time, so the thief actually steals Crybaby during that time. It's not really Crybaby's fault, you know. The spirit of the shaman, kind of the anger at being killed so unexpectedly, he possesses sort of like you say, Crybaby. So there is a little let's say, a little hint of the supernatural there, but it is also about the mistreatment. The elephant has never been treated badly before. It's always been treated kindly by the shaman and the mahout. But then when the thief steals it, he starts poking it with they have this thing called a bull hook that they use
Right, I
on
remember
elephants.
reading about that. Yes.
What they do is they use now with a bull hook, they will poke the elephant. I mean, the way that they domesticize these elephants in the first place is very bad. They mistreat them for weeks and weeks when they're babies, and then the mahout presents himself and frees the elephant, and that creates like a sort of savior image of the elephant, and but then what they do is they have this bull hook which has a spike on the end, and these mahouts, they know where all the pressure points and the tender bits, let's say, of an elephant are, and they prod them with that. And then what you see later, if you go to India and you go to a temple, you'll see that the mahouts, they don't have the metal stick anymore. That's part of the process that you're not allowed to witness beforehand. Then they just have a little, like a bamboo stick that they kind of swish in the general direction of the elephant, but that's enough, to keep the elephant where, going in a straight line where they want
Sounds
it to
like a
go, to
lot of
keep it from
torturing.
misbehaving. Yeah, yeah, that's it.
Because I know here in the United States, I'm sure you know, we used to have circuses here, but they
Yeah,
stopped all that because of which I never was aware of, and I thought was terrible. And a friend of mine brought it up to actually now, in the case of elephants, how they would abuse the elephants here in the circus. That's why they don't have them anymore. I'm getting the
yeah,
chills thinking about it because it was a shame that was the case because the circuses we had here were wonderful, but I never knew the level of torture that went on. Now, I also gathered that the shaman treated him pretty good, Crybaby, but or no, no,
yeah. No, no. The idea
the
was
change
that the
happened
shaman
with
and
the
the
thief.
mahout treated him fine, and they knew, the limitations of the elephant. That's why they had him chained outside during this particular season, where rogue elephants, tend to go a little bit crazy. An elephant is way more dangerous than you would think it is, especially if they're mistreated, because they're very intelligent animals. They can be quite
Yes, they
vindictive.
are.
Like um, there are even stories of an elephant killing somebody and then coming back and kind of attacking everybody at the funeral. You know what I mean? And
So
so
these depictations that were reading in the story, a lot of this stuff can really happen in real life. Then
yeah,
I
a
never
lot of
knew.
a lot of it is based on real elephants that went rogue and destroyed villages in India. One of the
Wow.
the big things is that once this happens, once an elephant does go rogue, now elephants are protected in India, so you're not supposed to kill them. But what normally happens is the villagers get
Yeah,
together
I
and they
read that
kill the rogue
too.
elephant. Yeah, which is part of the Rahul building the watchtower and staffing it with his men, and he's got some explosives from the mine because they're just going to blow the elephant up when they see it. This happens a lot, a lot. They set traps for the elephant and they either poison it or they blow it up if there's a
Wow.
rogue elephant. Yeah,
That's crazy, and I did read in the book, like you said, that it's against the law for them to even harm the elephants,
yeah,
almost like they're an endangered species kind of thing, I guess.
yeah,
Um, you see, a lot
yeah,
of this I didn't know, and that's why I find the book very interesting because your book goes into great detail about all the facts and I did want to trigger back to one question, but I want to acknowledge our friends that joined us. We have Miss Suze, Mr. Ulysses, and Miss Wendy. Welcome, welcome to Walt the Supernatural. This is our
hi guys.
weekly podcast, Readers Club, where we will discuss different books that we are reading. And today we're discussing Mr. Mark Watson, our well-to-do Arthur here, and his new book, A Crybaby, an awesome, awesome read. And Mr. Watson also has his own Substack on here. Am I correct? With some of his fiction and stories. Great writer. I do suggest checking him out. Um, but I wanted to ask, and if ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions, please post them in the chat so I can ask Mr. Watson. We'll be happy to ask those too, or any comments. We'd love to hear it. And I strongly suggest folks check out Mr. Watson's book, Cry Baby, on Amazon. Great read, fantastic read. I'm really, really, there's the book. Great cover, great everything, for sure. I wanted to ask you about the Mahout. Now, there's the shaman, and then there's the Mahout. Now, exactly what is the Mahout now? I mean, the shaman is like, I guess, a spiritual guide, I guess. Yeah?
A mahout is the elephant handler.
Okay.
Mahout is the guy who would own an elephant. Now, a lot of elephants in India, they're owned by they're kind of privately owned. Some of them are owned by beggars. So if you're in India, you might see a beggar with an elephant. Some of them are owned by quarries because they do some of the, the carrying and placing stuff around or knocking things over. So most elephants have a mahout. So the mahout is the guy who looks after the elephant, feeds it, takes it to places. Is the basically like the human friend of the animal.
Like a caretaker in a sense?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah. That's
okay.
right. It's less of
And
an
then
owner. It's less of an owner and more of a kind of symbiotic. You know what I mean? Like an elephant and
mhm,
a mahout are very. It's like a dog and its and its owner kind of thing, really.
oh, like a dog and its owner kind of relationship?
Yeah, but with the added sort of thing that the elephant is a lot more intelligent, a lot more,
Oh, yeah.
when you look online at if when I did the research into Crybaby and I wanted to see where these deaths came from, a lot of them are the elephant turning on the mahout. Once the mahout starts mistreating the elephant just throws him to the ground and steps on him, and that's the end of that. You know what I mean? So there was a lot of that kind of. That's how many of the deaths occur in these, with Asian elephants particularly.
Yeah, yeah, and that's unfortunate, It's really unfortunate 'cause they are beautiful creatures, they are very smart, that much I do know, I've always read that they really are smart, that's why a lot of them were used in the circuses, like I said, but unfortunately, they weren't, treated, kindly.
Yeah.
So the shaman in India, are most of the elephants owned by a shaman and they have a mahout? Is that how or
No,
the shaman
no,
is
no.
particularly
Most of them are owned by a mahout, but in Crybaby, mahout and the mahout and the shaman are old friends. There,
Oh, okay.
because
It's a great combination.
yeah, the idea I wanted to give was that they're both very old. Crybaby is kind of quite an old elephant as well. It's always been sort of in the village, giving the children the rides and everything. That's why I wanted to make it so that when he turned, when he turned, I don't want to say evil, when he was, when he turned rogue, that was the thing. It was kind of a connected already to the village, and they know him as Rondu Bachu, which is crybaby in India in Hindu, because he's always got a tear, in coming from his eye. So he's part of the
Yeah,
fixtures really. And then when he turns, I wanted that to create that sort of um, how would you say that rift in the community, between people who don't want him killed and the people who now have a reason to say, right, he killed my brother or he wrecked my house or he did this or he did that. So we're going to kill him, because that
right,
that is
that's to
what
justify
happens in
the
a lot of
reason.
villages in India now. They once an elephant goes rogue, they say, right, we're not waiting for them to come and take it somewhere else. That's the general sort of thing. The hunters will come and they'll find the elephant and then they'll stun it, and take it away. They put it and release it in the wild somewhere else, away from, away from the very, very far away from the original village, like, in a different province, basically. But that's what they do because, many of the times the situation is similar to the way I portray it, where The elephant isn't guilty. The elephant's gone rogue. The elephant's dangerous, but the all all the all the dots that connect that are there. The mistreatment or destroying its territory or things like that. I mean, elephants, they're such big creatures. They have to eat and drink a tremendous amount every day. So if you turn their natural habitat into sort of farmland or something else like a cocoa plantation or something like that, you take away all their food. They have to get food somehow. So they start breaking into houses, breaking into stores, breaking into buildings, things like that. That's how it works over there.
Wow, that's amazing. Um,
Yeah.
so as you know, Mr. Mark, here at the Vault, we are supernatural writers slash horror writers like yourself, thriller writers. Uh, so my question is, when it comes to your writing process,
Yep.
are you an outliner or do you do right by the seat of your pants? I'm just curious. How do you go about your writing process to share with our viewers here?
Kind of both. I mean, I have a rough idea of where I want the chapters to go. I have a rough idea of where I want. I mean, if you look at Crybaby, I'm pretty sure this has occurred to you. It's very much written like a Hollywood blockbuster. It's got a first act, a second act, and a third act.
I
You know,
noticed some of that, especially every chapter so far begins in bold. Like, here it is, the first few paragraph there. Yeah.
yeah. So I knew I wanted to do it like that. I knew I wanted. Um, I mean, what I try and do is I might plan things out. Maybe I have 20 post-it notes where I move around and want the story to go there. But yeah, generally I would say I'm a pantser. Like I write the chapter, and then I have a look at it. I might edit it and everything else like that once or twice. I don't change too much. I kind of trust in my own process. And um, on Substack particularly, if you're a serial fiction writer, you don't get a lot of time to. It's the way Oliver Dickens used to work. You write your stuff, you release it weekly, and that's it. You know what I mean? So it's out there. You can't go back really and change too much of it once you've put it out there, which I think is a great way of writing because you can't get writer's block. If you say to everybody, next chapter next week, then you've got to get down and you've got to do the work. You've got to show up, as they say now. So that's mainly how I work.
Now,
I might go away from a book for a while. Like at the moment, I've got a few other books on the go, and I sort of dip into them and dip out. But then when with Crybaby, I wanted to get it finished. I made that my main focus, and I did a chapter a week for 30 weeks. Never missed a week, and so that was it. My novel was done in 30 weeks,
and
30 chapters, 30 weeks.
yeah, and a quick question about that. From what I read on your Substack, that's initially how you started your Substack. From what I gathered, is that you started it with the intention of sharing a chapter each week from Crybaby on there. Am I right? And that's how you grew. You
Well,
grew
Crybaby's
immensely.
not my first book. I've written 10 children's books,
Uh
and
huh.
they were quite successful. So I built up quite a big following. But
Hmm.
then I'd always wanted to change from children's books to novels when my own kid was older. So that so that's the thing. And then so I started on a Substack with, first of all, it was just going to be another sort of outlet for marketing my children's books. But then I thought, okay, I'm gonna write a novel. I remember saying to my wife, right, that's it. I've got this. There's this new thing called Substack. You can publish every week. Substack it's like if you're old enough to be have been in self publishing for a while, then it's kind of a combination of everything that we used to want. It's like a WordPress site combined with an email service, combined with social media. So it's everything together and all free of
Hmm.
charge. So I was like, okay, so I brought my audience across. I already had 30,000 subscribers. from my website. So I brought them across to Substack and introduced them to Crybaby. That was the thing.
I love how you did it because in the back of my head, I don't know if you saw that I started a new section on my Substack because I knew you're a member. It's called The Dark Side of the Vault. Have you seen that?
Not yet, no, not yet, Bill. I have to have a look at it. I
No, I
was
was just asking. I did start, and what I was doing is I was reading I am reading a short story to everyone that I'm working on called is those if there's any that are subscribers that have heard my story, it's called The Reveal.
okay.
I have been writing that in sections and reading it as a podcast. It's now going to be on Mondays. But I'm posting sections of that in that section there as a serialization. And I thought, well, you did it and it seems to have worked real well. So I'm
Yep.
going to try that with my stories, my novellas, novels. And of course, once we have other writers here that join our community here at Vault of the Supernatural, I like to see them, at their stories so we could send that out to the community.
Perfect.
Uh,
Yep.
'Cause that's what we would like to do here at Vault the Supernatural is grow our community of supernatural and horror writers, and help them succeed and get exposure to their work. So,
Hmm.
but I like how you did that. That's why I wanted to point that out. And I that also goes into what I was talking about last night, um, about being accountable for your writing, to make
Yep.
sure you dedicate yourself to your craft and that
Yep.
you take the time and do whatever it is you're working on. I know I
Hmm.
struggle with that. That's why I'm doing this here, to help grow and do things for my own self. And one thing that I started last night, I did a podcast. I didn't put it out yet, but it's for our accountability club where
Okay.
hopefully we get members to join and interact with each other, and they meet on their own, and then we meet weekly and talk about, what is it that we're struggling with. And I think doing these weekly serializations is a way to make yourself accountable for your
Yeah.
writing.
Brilliant.
Get
Very good.
something out there, you know. I
Yep.
just think that helps. Now, when it comes to your process, I know I use a few different tools. Do you use any special software or tools to help with organization, like your writing or anything like that? Or you do it all through Word or
Just Word.
yeah.
Just Word.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah. I write in Word, and then um, that's it. I might run it through. I might run it through AI, and ask AI just to check punctuation. Sorry, punctuation and spelling. Just make sure I
mhm,
haven't, like, if I've missed something, if I've missed a spelling mistake when I'm editing it. But that's
mhm.
literally it. And then I generally I used to use AI to make like a moving sort of animated GIF for each chapter,
Like a
in on
picture?
Substack, just to sort of, to show the characters or to show what I was thinking about
You mean like an
with the
image?
environment or something. Yeah, but there's such a, what's the word, like a backlash against AI at the moment, that I took that out of the final book. And I, like, the cover was designed by AI, but then I got one of my artists who I work with on children's books. I got him to hand paint me a new cover, because I didn't want any of the backlash. I mean, I also write Cthulhu, Lovecraft stories, and I post them on like the Lovecraft groups in Facebook, and I'm constantly getting, the image is created by AI, which makes me think that it was written by AI, which is crazy. But that seems to be a sort of a backlash that writers are facing at the moment, particularly if you're trying to use AI in any way at all. Everyone thinks, okay, you've used AI for everything, for all of it, which is not the case.
Yeah, and now that we're discussing AI, what is your opinion of AI and I have
I
my
think it's
opinion, which I'll
brilliant. I think
mention
it's absolutely
as
amazing. Now,
right.
you can't put the sausage back in the skin; it's not going to disappear. So you might as well use it. I mean, it's a bit like saying the drum machine killed drummers in bands, and clearly it didn't. You know what I mean? It is something that we should try to use. Obviously, there are ethical problems. The way that they use all the other authors' works, to create this big sort of subset of information that you can draw from, or stealing like work from artists or things like that. But I think it's one of those things now. It's like what shall we say? Printing press. Didn't kill the guy who writes with a pen. So it is something that I always remember. Like I tell the story, my mum when she was at work in the 1980s. They got a computer, and my mum said, "Oh, I just refuse to use it. I refuse to go near it. We don't need a computer." And now, she struggles to use a mobile phone and things like this. And I think that that's sort of a bit of a negative way of looking at things, where we're going to have to use these things. It's not going to go away. So it's better that we learn to use them for our benefit rather than just saying, "No, I'm totally against it." You know what I mean? That's not going to get you anywhere.
Right.
So obviously, I think there's a line. You don't want to use it to write your entire story, to write your entire chapter, but to use
Right.
it, using it. Let's say, okay, another thing. I've got three books at the moment that are close to publication. So I've hired 3 artists to do the covers, and that's going to take each one about 3 months each. Okay, but in the meantime, I want an image that I can present to people and say, okay, I've got a new story on Substack, weekly story. It's called For Sale One Vampire. In 30 months, it's going to be in 30 weeks or whatever, it'll be a novel. But meanwhile, here's chapter 1, and here's a picture of it. I can't afford, to, let's say, hire an illustrator every week to create an illustration for a chapter. So an AI is very, very good for that, I think.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. I'm just answering a comment here. Just allow me a moment.
Sure.
Yes, and I want to address something that Bathrobe Guy posted, and basically what you and I are saying here. Uh, at first, because I have a friend, a very good friend. I don't know if you've seen her on here yet, or anything like that. I'm not sure. Uh, but she's been in my post. She's a very good writer. Her name is Janice Lamb. She also
Okay.
has come out with several books on Amazon that she's published. She's written under several pseudonyms, and she
Hmm.
also has her own publishing business. And she's one of our partners here with the Vault, because
Okay.
when people become a paid member, they get discounts through her publishing business to help with blurbs. And because a blurb's a pain in the neck to write, and she's like a rock star within. She's come out with some really great books on that. But anyways, the point I was bringing up is she uses AI to help her with her writing. At first I was one of these writers because her husband's also a writer. He's a retired lawyer, and I was one of these writers. Oh no, I ain't touching that. I don't want to touch that. I don't believe in, letting it write the whole thing. It's not because this is me writing. This is Bill Gerace writing the story, not some machine. But then
Yeah.
I slowly, because I see everybody's using it, and I thought it's all about how you use the tool. And
Yeah.
now I have used the tool. I use it to help me with my notes on here. I use it to help with my articles. Like I'll outline everything, and then I'll have AI tweak it for me, which I
Yeah.
don't, because it's not writing the story. It's just helping me. I think it's all about how you use the tool. Now, we
Yeah.
don't want to, we don't welcome Trish, welcome Lukia, welcome to Vault the Supernatural. This is a community of supernatural writers and horror writers, and we have our famous writer here, Mark Watson, author of Crybaby. It's a really great book on Amazon. Check it out. Check it out with a fantastic cover, folks. And we're discussing his book and the craft of writing. Right now, we're discussing about AI, and I do use it. like I say, I have used it, which I don't think anything's wrong with that. I have used it to create images because I know I can't draw fancy stuff like that. There's no way. I don't have the technique or the skill or any of that, or the time or the money to hire somebody. So I have used that. When you're a new writer, you just are limited. I mean, not that I'm new, I just don't have, I'm not established as much as I would like to be. But I do use it for the brainstorming. I also use it for what Bathroom Guy is saying in the comments, refine punctuation and grammar. Because I use a few tools. That's what I was getting ready to say too. When I get stuck, like, there's certain things like my current novel I'm working on is about it's called The Blood here. That's tentative now, it could change, but it's about a fellow who is a vampire slayer. He doesn't realize he's a vampire slayer. It's a gay supernatural romance kind of thing. Um, and he doesn't know that he's a supernatural uh vampire slayer. He was adopted, or his mother, who was a vampire slayer, gave him to this lady, and he doesn't know all this about his path. But what I'm saying is I have used AI to, like, give me some ideas for character names
Okay.
because
Yeah.
that sometimes that can be hard.
Yeah.
And I want it to represent what I want that name to represent that character's personality. So I plug that stuff in, it gives me suggestions, and I think
Yeah.
they're good suggestions. I have used it, like I say, to tweak some things and to help me with notes. I
Mhm.
don't see no harm in that. I put in, what I want the note to say, and then it
Mhm.
structures it for me. And I think that's really it's all about how you use the tool, as long as you don't abuse it. You know what I mean?
I remember, Bill, right, a few years ago, I used to have bags of books, and I used to take my book whenever I moved flat or something like that. I used to have these bags of actual books, paperback books, all my favorite books, right? And I had thousands of them, and they would, whenever I moved anywhere, I had to take all these books with me. You know what I mean? And then I remember someone saying, "Oh, you should get a Kindle. You should get an Amazon Kindle, and you could put all your books on the Kindle and things like that." And I remember saying, I'm never going to get a Kindle. I love books. I love the smell of them. I love the feel of them in my
I know what
hand. I
you're
love the
talking
feel
about.
of
I was
paper,
one of those writers
and
too.
yeah, and all of this kind of stuff. And then I got a Kindle for Christmas, and a week later, I'd got rid of all my books. You know what I mean? I was like, wow, I love my Kindle. I've got a, you know what I mean? Everything is here. I've got it. It's on the screen. I've got all my books on this Kindle now, and so I think sort of like we're a little bit afraid of um, moving forward sometimes because there's a lot of romantic sort of ideas associated with being a writer as well. You know what I mean? Like the writer in the dark room, sort of working with a pen on his on paper and everything, and sort of banging out these ideas. And now we've got all these tools to really really help with that. I think that like they should be embraced, and we should try and use them to the best of our abilities. I know on one hand, you've got some people who immediately say, "Oh, that's AI, so it must be bad," or "You've used AI, so you must have taken shortcuts," or things like that. I also know every artist that I know is also using AI. They haven't gone, "Oh, okay, you're killing me," "You're killing my industry," or everything else like that. They're sending me things. "Hey, have you seen the new video I've just made using Midjourney? Have you seen this? Have you seen this new way of doing things?" Like so, it's not quite as um, what's the word, harmful as people think it is. It's like these people who say, "Oh, I don't want to be on Facebook. I don't want to be on social media. I don't believe in it,"
Mhm.
and things like that. And you think, okay, you don't have to believe in it or anything, but it's a great way of staying in touch with friends from school and friends who you don't see for many years and everything. So it is that kind of thing where the thing about AI is it appeared out of nowhere maybe 2 years ago, and all of a sudden it could do everything. They said, okay,
Yeah.
it can do this for you, it can do that for you. And so it was a bit of a shock to the system. I admit that, everyone suddenly went, wow, but it is what it is. Like I said, the drum machine didn't kill the drummer, and possibly makes you even raise your game. It possibly separates the wheat from the chaff. You know, the AI can't come out from behind the computer and look over your shoulder and see what the real world sort of implications are that of its work. So it is very much kind of like it's a very sort of technically adept, like copy and paste. You know what I mean? It's not quite the sort of it's not like a culture mind from an E&M Banks book. It's not the like an artificial intelligence from the future that's like a separate brain. This is still very much like a computer program, really, but a very advanced one, very good at telling you, what comes next, I suppose, or what you should do. I mean, I know as well when I've been writing stories, I've come to a stumbling block and thought, oh, what happens next? So I've asked AI, give me a few ideas, and even um, if you don't use them, the fact that they can put them there and you can discount them can help you to get where you're going, if you know what I mean. It can help you along the way to you discovering what comes next.
Yeah, I agree with all that because AI, uh, it's just if we use it as our assistant, and it's all about how you use the tool. And I have to agree with you with the whole having a book in your hands when back in the day when and then the Kindles came out, and I'm like, oh no, I like going to the library and get the book out or going to the bookstore. Much easier, and I enjoy and the books are really I enjoy reading them that way now, and that's another thing I wanna point out to friends and
I
Mr.
have them
Marsh.
on my phone. I know, now I have them. I actually have the Kindle software on my phone because it's a better screen than a Kindle screen, and I read every night,
Oh, wow.
on my phone basically. So that's the way I read books now. More than anything is yeah, using the Kindle app on my mobile phone. And I read my books. I,
Yeah, I mean,
I
just
find
about
books
every
themselves.
industry.
Galaxy Press send me. I work with Galaxy Press, and they send me this recent publication of Battlefield Earth, and it's
Wow.
massive. It's massive. There must have
Yeah,
been like a there must have been a rainforest
it looks like the
gone into
Bible.
this. You know? Yeah,
It looks like
and
the Bible. Jeez. But no, and that's another thing I was gonna say, technology has made life better. Uh, um, I know, right, bathrobe guy? He says it's funny that we still call it a phone, our phones, but that they're not called something else. But
yeah,
our phones do so much more now. That's true. But what I was going to say is, with technology, it's made our writing a lot easier, and other fields are using this technology. I know where I work, we use AI for different things. When I worked in one department, we were using it for different things. It's used in every field now, just about, I think. So why shouldn't we as writers be allowed, as long as we're not having the like just say AI spit me a story out. Now that's wrong. I agree that's wrong. But if you put your content in there and just say, hey, could you structure this for me? Or you research something and sometimes I'll have AI even develop it more for me because I want it, to make more sense. I don't see anything wrong.
punctuation, Bill. Punctuation. Who wants to do punctuation? You know what I mean? Who
I
wants to
know I do feel
when you're a
uncomfortable.
writer and you're going through and you think, okay, should this be a comma? Should this be a full stop? Should I have a comma and then quotation marks and then start with a lowercase letter or is it an uppercase letter? And you've got to kind of remember all these things and you think, well, I'm a writer, why do I have to be the editor as well when I can literally just put this into AI, like even just a paragraph. Sometimes I'll write a paragraph and then I'll put it into AI and say, "Can you correct the punctuation on this paragraph?" And then I see it, and then I've got a nice clear paragraph, that I can then move on to from the next one. I don't get it to change. I'm very specific. I'll say, "Don't change anything else except the
Mhm.
punctuation and any spelling mistakes." And then that's it. You have something presentable. You can immediately put it out there
Exactly. All you
And
have
it's not
chat
going to have
check it.
these little niggly mistakes in it that you would leave yourself if you're doing the editing, especially if you're a serial fiction writer and it's, you've got to get your idea for a chapter, then you've got to write it out, then it needs editing, then it needs putting out there.
Right, if you're on a
Then you get people
timeline.
contacting you and saying, "Oh, you've missed the punctuation of this part," or this is wrong, and you think, "Oh, okay," So then you have to do it again. Why not? Why not use AI just for those little pieces? It doesn't have to, like you say, you don't have to go in and go, "Okay, write me a vampire book." You know what I mean? And then you go off and have a cup of coffee and come back and you've got a full vampire book written. That obviously that's maybe taking things a bit too far, but for it to help you, why not? Why not? It is
Exactly.
that's what it was invented for.
And I just want to put a quick disclaimer out there. Just got a little blurb over my phone here about unstable internet. So if we disconnect, just so we know, but we're going to try to run this till 2:30. We got about 12 minutes or a little beyond.
Sure.
Um, but I did want to say, um, about uh something what bathroom guy was saying. I never really depend on the AI to write everything for me. I use it. I come up with most of my stuff and then I have it, make suggestions or tweak it because I am the writer, and but I want it to enlighten it for me. And another tool that I use because it has AI in there and it catches all those like what we were talking about with the wordsmiths and the commas. I use Hemingway. I think
Yeah.
Hemingway's great because it will put it on, because I have mine set, especially for my Substack, because it's something I learned when I started writing online again last year, is that you have to write on a 6th grade reading level.
Okay.
That's what people tell me, that's what I read, that most people, that's how that what they understand. So, to make sure, so because you don't wanna make your stuff long and drawn out. So my Hemingway does that for me. It cuts out a lot of the, you know, redundancy in something, or it'll say, put it, fix this, fix that. Yeah, I love Hemingway, bathrobe guy. Use it. Anything you see here on Vault of the Supernatural has been run through Hemingway first.
Okay.
It gets written, it gets tweaked by AI, and then I reread it and make corrections, and then Hemingway reads it, makes corrections. Then I read it again, and then I read it one final time once it's in my draft folder there, and then make sure it's no, because I don't, it
I
just
think
saves a lot of time.
one of the things I've learned over the years as well, Bill, is nobody else can write the story that you want to write it except you. It doesn't matter if you tell them what you're doing. I used to be like, people would say, "Oh, I'm writing a story, but I'm not going to tell you about it unless you sign a NDA or something like this." And I'll be like, "Okay." But one of the things I've found out is you can tell people what you're writing on. You can tell people your story because at the end of the day, no one else can write it except you. It is your,
That's right.
you know what I mean? It is something that you, even if you don't know where, like, we say, do you plan it out or do you write it sort of by the seat of your pants as things are going along? I'm pretty sure that even if you're a pantser, as they call it, you have some idea, even if it's completely subconscious, but you have some idea where it's going. Um, that's the first thing. And also, I think it's nice to be surprised when your characters start doing things differently than the way let's say, you'd plan them to go. Like a big example of this is Crybaby, where I didn't know Ahana would become the hero. At the beginning, I wanted Raj to be the hero. When
Oh,
I when I
oh,
when I got
the stop.
there, and then when Ahana entered the story, then she kind of took over. She took over. She
Yeah,
became like the female protagonist of the book, and
she's
it
a
wasn't
strong female
really.
character, by the way.
Yeah, she wasn't really. It was meant to be sort of split between the three of them in the same kind of way as Jaws. They are the Roy Schneider, the Richard Dreyfuss, and the other guy. That's their kind of characters. They go out and when they go to hunt Crybaby at the end, that's like them going out on the orca, in Jaws. I noticed as well, very similar, is there's a film called The Ghost in the Darkness where they hunt a couple of lions in Africa. And that, if you look at the beats of the story, that's also kind of a remake of Jaws. It's the same kind of thing. So I didn't want to, let's say, remake the wheel with my monster book, but I wanted to use some of the things that had gone before. But I knew at the end of the day, like only I could write it. Only I can. I think that's an important thing when you're when you're a serial writer, is to realize, okay, I've got this world, and I'm playing in it. This is my sandbox, and I'm kind of playing in it, but I can still be surprised. Like a character can do something unexpected. Maybe I wanted to kill somebody, but I don't want to anymore. Things like that. I remember with Oliver Dickens, there was a lot of if he killed off a character that was very, very popular, he would get a load of mail the week after saying, "Oh, why have you killed this guy? Why have you killed this guy?" So then he'd bring him back. You know what I mean? And I think that's one of the beauties of being a serial writer, is you can respond to the way your audience wants a book, and to your characters. You can respond to your characters as well.
I agree with that. I was just getting ready to say, had a thought with your characters. I'm just curious, and then I'm going to read Bathroom Guy's comment here. Um, I mean, Bathrobe Guy. I keep saying Bathroom Guy. I am so sorry, Bathrobe Guy. My apologies. Uh, so I was saying, with your characters, do they ever communicate to you, like like up here in your head, like tell you this is what I want done, or let you know, and
Kind of. What I like to do is, when I'm going to sleep at night, I like to think of the chapter. I like to think of my next chapter. And maybe the first night nothing happens. Maybe the second night nothing happens. Maybe the third night you think, oh, I've got the full chapter. You think, oh, I've got a full story. I've got the full thing here. I know how it's all going to pan out. You know what I mean? I remember there was one night I couldn't sleep, and I ended up thinking of the full. I had the full story of one of my short stories that I published a few days ago. Don't
mhm.
tell mum the babysitter's undead. Which is like a Cthulhu Lovecraftian one that I published on my other Substack. Um, and I had the full thing. That's how I kind of write. Is I think of where I am in the book, and then when I'm going to sleep at night, I try to come up with ideas as I'm lying there. I try to write the next story in my head, and yeah, like I say, sometimes I will get surprised by a character. Sometimes a character will, do something more than what I thought, or be more important, or sort of take a bigger role in something. And I think but that's the beauty. That's the beauty of being a writer. Is being able to be surprised by where your story is gonna take you. Then let's say you're not just writing it, you're also kind of experiencing it as well. You're being swept along by it as well.
Yeah, I agree. Sometimes my characters will, say things, come to me in thought and say, I want it done this way, or this is what's going to be. And, or as I'm writing, they'll take a turn that way instead of the path defined. That does happen. Uh, because that's what they want, you know. Uh, that's, that's the nature of writing is, as you're composing and writing your scene or your chapter or your paragraph, they do something different. Like my one of my characters that I'm outlining now, her name is oh, just because I just was thinking about her this morning. Gosh, you ever do that with your characters when you have their name and then it slips your mind? That does
Yeah,
happen once in a while,
we're,
but
we're having a senior moment, Bill.
exactly, Jenny,
Brain fog.
yeah, so Jenny Ellison, one of my characters, uh she is the one that took in my character that's the, vampire slayer. She knows that he's a vampire slayer. His
Hmm.
mother brought him to her as a child, maybe a baby. Um, and because this Jenny is a member of an organization called the Lantern Order. And what
Yep.
they do, they look out for all the vampire slayers and make sure, because they have a dangerous job. And sometimes they don't even want to be a vampire slayer. But
Okay.
in her character profile, as I was writing it, I knew her father was bad, but he was more bad than what I thought because she was telling me so as I'm writing. Because they'll tell you, the real deal, and that's what she was telling me as I wrote her outline. And then come to find out that her mother, who uh, she left her father, who lived in Hawaii, and they come back here to Phoenix, and her mother was a school teacher. She took in this young fella uh, who then left Phoenix, but now he's going to come back in the novel, and this might be a new love interest for Jenny.
Okay.
Because
Yep.
her other husband, he was a vampire slayer too, but he was killed and converted to a bloodsucker, because that's
Okay.
always a battle. But what I'm saying, as I was writing all this, she was telling me this is the way to go. You know what I mean? I don't know
Yeah.
if you've ever had that experience.
I think more with me, it's more like if I talk to somebody about it as well, then suddenly things become clear. You might say, "Okay, I'm stuck with this plot point. I don't know how to get this character from here to here. I was thinking of doing this and doing this. Oh no, that won't work. Oh, wait a minute. Maybe if I do this and do that. Oh yeah, there it is. You know what I mean? I think that's part of the beauty of writing is discovering the way that you move everything from A to B. You know what I mean? That's the beauty of it is when you say, okay, I've had a brilliant idea for a chapter. Um, I mean, you've read Crybaby, or you've almost finished. I can tell you, Rahul wasn't going to be the mayor. That was as big a surprise to me as a hopeful
I'm
it was for
shocked
you in the book.
how he managed to be mayor. In fact,
He was just going to
when
be a bandit. He was going to be a bandit guy
okay,
who hunted down
okay, so
who hunted down the elephant. But then all of a sudden, he said, "I'm the mayor," and I was like, "Wow, yeah,
talk
that
about the
brings
shock.
everything together."
Talked about the shock with him being mayor. I could see. I remember this scene where after he shot that guy who was smuggling the gold, and I think it was right after that they said, what happened to his brother and everything. They was killed, and they want to meet with the mayor. And he said, "Oh, something." I forget what the exact words, but here he said, "Tell them the mayor will be there, or whatever." And I'm thinking, "You're the mayor, and you lead this
Yeah,
gang of bandits." It's just, but it's interesting, and it also adds to a Hana's character because she doesn't trust him as far as she could throw an arrow
no,
because she picked up on his deception that you could
yeah.
tell throughout the book. Very good characterization, by the way.
But then there's a shootout by the road. I'm not sure if you've got that far, and she has to trust him after that. He sort of saves their bacon, but he sacrifices his own sort of bandits to do it. He kind of clears house. He realizes that
Oh, you mean
can't be both things,
the
so he
shooting
has to get
incident?
rid of the bandits. Yeah,
The shooting incident where he had the guy, I can't, his name began with an R too. The guy that was supposed to kill her. Is that what you're
yeah,
talking about? Yeah, I was
yeah,
shocked he did that. That was a shocker because I really thought, oh, she's gone because he's got her right at a straight aim, and here Rahul came and killed him, and he acted like he was the Godfather, but he's
yeah,
the furthest thing from it.
yeah.
It's good stuff. It's good stuff. But yeah,
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
well,
I haven't sold many copies. You know what I mean? Because at the moment I'm having a new cover designed, and then I'm going to start the actual marketing for the book. But one of the other things I enjoy about Substack is you write your book, you throw it out there, and then you move on to the next one, move on to the next one, move on to the next one. So I'm before now I have one book on Amazon, but I've also got about 3 books that are nearly ready to come as well. So I love that about Substack as well. You're constantly writing. It puts pressure on you, even if nobody's reading it, which is one of the things of Substack. I don't find Substack to be quite as magical as everybody makes it out to be. My feed is full of drop your Substack below and I'll follow you if you follow me.
I know, I did that
You
a
know what I
few times.
mean?
I don't do that anymore because it
Nobody's
doesn't
really
really get you
growing.
quality
Nobody's really
followers.
growing. Yeah.
It doesn't
So
get you people that are gonna really be interested because I've done that. You're better off doing it through notes and engagement and writing quality posts like what
yeah,
you're doing and what
nobody
I'm trying
nobody
to do.
really wants to read your stuff. They want you to read their stuff, and they want you to pay for their stuff, which is kind of not quite what I'm interested in. Like, I don't do the sub for sub thing because I don't want to subscribe to other people's stuff if I don't if they're not in my genre. You know what I mean? If it's not fiction or supernatural or horror or something else like that, I don't care. You know what I mean? I don't want to read
Yeah,
how to grow your Substack. I don't want to read a Substack about how to grow your Substack. You know what I mean?
right.
Which seem to be the most successful ones, to be perfectly honest. But I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in using Substack to get my work done. You know what I mean? As in, like, okay, there's 1,000 people expecting a story next week. I've got to do a story. I don't. I think I use it for that, and then if it grows, it grows. But the other,
That's what I was thinking about too. Because when I first started this whole Substack thing, I was like stressing when doing this and doing that, and I didn't do this today, and I didn't do that, and I got to do the notes, and I got to. So now I'm at a point where because I work a full-time job, and I like what you someone in here was saying their jobs. I think it was Rhodes was saying their job's real intense, and they and I go through the same thing because I work somewhere where I take polls, and that job takes a lot of energy because it's dealing
yeah,
with personal loans and money, and uh, you with those calls, you have to follow like 6,000 rules just to process someone's application. So I try
sure,
to write before work, and if there's any energy left, if I can do something after work, okay. But I was getting stressed because I wasn't meeting things I wanted to do. So now I'm just doing what I can. I
yeah,
did revise my writing schedule, um,
yeah,
because, a good friend of mine, my friend Jay Lamb that I was telling you about, she opened this Substack one here, folks. If you're interested, it's called The Writer's Warren. She's a very good
hmm,
writer, but she
okay,
was also saying what you said. It first of all, it takes a very long time to get paid subscribers.
yeah,
What I've heard, and I didn't want to go much into detail about this, but since you brought it up, I think that, with something like that with that being said, I'm not, gonna be focusing a lot on I mean, yeah, I have the paid, but if people are interested, fine. If not, I have free stuff too. So, and then I'm gonna use it, which I think you're doing too, and I think it's a great idea, and I'm gonna put it under that dark tales section, is just putting your work out there. And
yeah,
then once I get my book out, once Blood Hairs is done, hopefully someday, um, I could put it on Substack here and promote it that way, because I see a lot of people do that on here, and that's another really good way to get your work out is coming here and
yeah,
advertising it because it's a good marketing. I think it's a good because there's thousands and thousands of people on this platform. So I
yeah,
think that's a really good idea. Even if you um I know someone told me you really shouldn't do promotions and notes, but I think when it comes to certain things like when we publish a book, I've seen other writers on the fiction timeline, I know you have too. They
yeah.
put their book up there, I just came I don't see anything wrong with that. Do you?
No, why not? No, no, why?
I mean, that
We're here to
exposes
sell
you
books. It's That's part of the job. I would say that's the hardest part of the job.
is the
You probably
marketing.
had the same rude awakening as I had, where I remember maybe 15 years ago, I wrote my first children's book. I got the illustrations, I put it all together, I put it on Amazon, I pressed the publish button, I sat back and I went, right, now what? Now what's next? You
Yeah,
know what I mean? Now
nothing,
I have to,
cricket.
and then I find out, okay, now you have to market like crazy. Now you have to tell everybody about your book. You have to beg for reviews. You have to do
You
all
gotta
the
get on
sort of
TikTok,
things that
and you gotta
everybody.
get on
Yeah,
Facebook, and you gotta do this and
yeah,
that because, I wrote a collection of short stories that I put on Amazon back in October. I think I sold 10 copies of that book. And my friend JL, who, like I said, she's an expert with all this. One day we'll have to have her on here, maybe with you and her. She has a lot of great things too, but she was saying a lot of it is getting your name out there. And another thing she said, which I've been dragging my feet on, and when it comes to putting your stuff on Amazon, your books, is to keep writing and putting another book out there. Keep because that
Yes,
helps with
correct.
the traction.
There are 30,000 books published every day on Amazon, and
Wow.
99.999% of them are rubbish, are absolute rubbish. No one's ever going to read them.
Wow.
So your book immediately drops into that big pile of slop. You know what I mean? And your book has to raise a flag and kind of pull itself out of that, gradually to become, noticed. I mean, my book, I wrote a children's book. I've got it here, called Milo and Z. Can you see it?
Mhm. Yeah, I could see it's beautiful cover.
Because it features a bull terrier, it became very, very popular. It's the best-selling bull terrier book in the world, and it became very popular with the owners of that breed of dog. So that is what, like, made that. That is how I got my 30,000 subscribers. You know what I mean? That was my book that literally pulled itself out of the sort of quagmire of self-published books, and that was the one that sort of, I think that has like 450 reviews on Amazon. It always sells every month. It sells a few copies, and what happens is when you publish a book on Amazon, if you use your 5 free days, you get 5 days where you can give your book for free. On the days that your book is free, if somebody downloads your book and then downloads, let's say, another book that's free, that's by J.K. Rowling, for instance, then it'll say in J.K. Rowling's book, it'll say people who enjoyed this book also enjoyed, and they'll be your book. So Amazon is all about connections. It's all about connections between your books and other books that people are reading. And also, the more books you have on Amazon, the more free days you can give to people, the more you can give your book away to gather reviews. I mean, I don't know about you, but as a writer, I would rather 10 million people read my book free of charge than 10 people paid me 1 million. You know what I mean? To read my book. I'm not.
Exactly.
My biggest fear is that nobody reads my stuff. Not that I don't make any money out of it, or that I don't, I'm not a famous writer or anything. That's not
Right.
true. I mean, it's enough for me to make a tiny drop in the contribution to human culture, whether it's famous or not. Who cares? Whether the books sell, or not, who cares? I mean, one of the first things I ever did when I published my first book was looking at ways of giving it for free, on the torrent sites and things like that, to try and just to build up a readership, you know. I don't
Mhm.
think anybody nowadays. I do know some very famous authors. I mean, one of the beautiful things about becoming a writer is you can speak to anybody. I can email Stephen King and say, "Hey, blah blah blah," and he'll probably reply to me. You know what I mean? Because writers know how to speak to other writers, and you
True.
you lose that kind of fear of approaching people. So I know some very very famous writers, and they're struggling. The average um, sort of earnings per year of a fiction writer is about $7,000. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's not
So
high. It's not
no,
something it's not a get rich scheme, that's for
no,
sure.
I
Yeah.
because I remember the first thing I did when I published the book, everyone said, "Oh, are you a multimillionaire writer now, best-selling writer?" And I was like, "No, it doesn't really work like that. I don't think anybody is." You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
The other ones that are hitting them
Writer, yes. Famous, possibly, but rich, no. That's not why I do it. You know what I mean? There's
exactly.
even family. I'll have family. I'll have aunties and uncles say, "Oh, this will be the one. This will be the one that makes you, the big sort of rich multimillionaire author." and you think, well, I doubt it. You know what I mean? Even if it does sell a million copies, it's not. That's not all going to come to me. You know,
Exactly.
that's the
The only
thing.
ones that hit those kind of numbers is like you say, Stephen King, James Cleese, the
Yeah,
names at the top of the line there. But us little people, it's a different story.
we do it for the. I don't think I could do anything else. I couldn't do another job. You know, now I've been doing this, and you know, I'm a self-employed sort of writer. I have my own imprint, like your friend. So
Uh
I
huh.
can, you know, I do that as kind of my side business, publishing and marketing other people's books. Um, but I don't think I could do, you know, I don't think I could have the commitment anymore to go in and work for somebody else and share an office with people, and you know what I mean. I don't have that
Yeah,
much
I
commitment
know.
now. So I'm
Luckily,
quite lucky that my when I first when I published my first book and I realised I had to market it, I grew my social media enormously. Have got like 40,000 followers on Instagram. I've got maybe 500,000 followers on Pinterest and things like that. So I can I sell marketing to other authors. You know what I mean? That's my kind of my side hustle. But that's what pays the
mhm,
bills. The books don't. You know, and that's something I think that authors should realize, which is, you know, you might not make it. You might make if somebody emails you and says, or like you said, Bill, oh, I've bought Crybaby and I'm really enjoying it. That's your reward. You know what I mean? The reward is not the money that comes from you buying Crybaby. The reward is that you're reading and enjoying it. You're in my world. You know what I mean? I've created a world. I've put it onto paper. I've created those characters. I've written a novel. I don't care if 10 people read it or a million people read it. As long as one person reads it and enjoys it and gives me
yeah,
nice feedback, and that's it. That's the reward that you want. You know, I that was the same with kids' books. You know, I used to get an email say, "Okay, my son read Shark in the Park and it's his favorite book. Can you sign me a copy and send it back?" Yeah, of course. You know, that's why I do it. But you know, the other thing, if you're looking to make it rich, I don't know, buy stock or something. You know,
exactly right. Go play a lottery ticket. You have a better chance.
exactly.
I agree with that. No, I would like to write full time though someday. But I know that takes a while doing different things. So um, it's a goal. It's a goal, but that takes a while. Even if I have mild success years down the road and can leave a year or two early, I'll be happy with that. You know what I mean?
It never stops anyway. Even if you get a bestseller, I've had a bestseller, Bill, but it doesn't stop you. That's like you can't dwell on those achievements. You've got to keep moving forward anyway. You can't
Yeah.
once you're a writer, you can't stop. You know what I mean? And the other beautiful thing I find out as well is that you don't get to choose. You don't get to choose your bestsellers. You're in a similar way that a musician doesn't get to choose what song is a hit or not. You know what
Right.
I mean?
Right.
You all you have to do is keep going and keep going and keep going, and then one day someone will go, "Oh, wow, that's awesome." You know what I mean? And maybe you get the publishing deal, and you know, see your book in every bookstore, and someone makes a movie out of it or something like that. You know what I mean? But unfortunately, you don't get to choose that. You somebody else will choose that for you. You know what I mean? And all you have to do
Exactly.
is just keep going and keep going and keep going. And even then, you know, I know authors who've had I had a publishing contract. I had what's it called, a literary agent in New York and everything else like that, and nothing came of it. Nothing came of it for years and years. And I remember I was so pleased to sign the contract. I was so happy that I thought I'd made it and everything else like that, and nothing happened. Nothing came from it. So finally, I was like, okay, I'm just going to keep going with my own thing, and it's difficult to stop. I think if you're a real writer, because your characters won't let you, your stories won't let you. No one else can tell the stories that you can, and so why stop? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even if it's
No.
just for one person, even if it's just for one or two people, like you made my day, Bill. You've contacted me and said, okay, I've got Crybaby, I'm reading it, I'm loving it, I've nearly finished it. You know what I mean? Which means you've definitely read it. It's it is a full novel, so you've obviously read a little bit each day. You've followed the
So I'm
story, you've
almost
followed the
done it. I'm
characters.
like,
That's my reward.
yeah, I'm almost done it. I'm around, I think, page 150 something or something around there. But it's really it's a kind of I find when I read, I say, well, sometimes I'll say I read for a certain amount, but it's kind of book that it keeps you wanting to read more and more and more. It just keeps you on the edge of your seat because of the type
Brilliant.
of action and characterization. Friends, Crybaby, Amazon, check it out. Mr. Mark's going to show us the cover. Yep, there it is. It's a great book, great read. And I tell you, it's inspiration for me, actually, because this gives me inspiration to finish my projects I'm working on, Blood Hair. I even got involved in this thing. That's what I was going to talk about too. One of the things I use for my writing is called AutoCrate. Have you ever heard of them?
No.
It's a platform that you could use. How should I say it? You could run your stuff through their checks. They've gotten more advanced than they used to be. They have all kinds of courses in there you could take, and it has a thing where you could do like outline your story and all kinds of. It's really really great platform. But one
Okay.
thing they got going on now is the 90-day challenge. Write your novel or novella in 90 days. I know. Amidst with everything else I'm trying to do, I've decided to throw my ring in there and do this as well. So I'm doing that, friends, and I'll talk about that in next week's podcast, uh, about how my experience with that. But it's really good. And welcome, Drew. Thank you. Welcome to Vault the Supernatural. We are doing our first weekly reader club. We will probably be wrapping it up in a few minutes here, but welcome, welcome. We are talking to Mr. Watson, who is the author of Crybaby. And we are talking about the writing process and all things writing and his wonderful book here. So yeah, I just was saying that I put myself in there in that challenge because I said, you know what, this will give me accountability. Again, going back what I was saying earlier, to make sure I write something every day because I have a tendency to procrastinate or say, oh, I don't feel like it today. And uh oh, did you see what Drew said? He said, Mark is the did you see what he wrote?
No, I can't
Uh,
see them.
he can't see oh, he wrote Mark is the shiznit. Drew wrote that you're the shiznit. I think that's
Oh,
awesome.
thank you, Drew. I've got to
Crybaby
say,
Willie.
Bill, my screen has been frozen since it started. My screen has been frozen, and it just says connecting in the top
Oh,
since it started. So it's just been I've just been basically looking at the camera and nodding and hoping that this all comes together
no,
at the
I
end.
I
But
could
it's just been a
no, I
frozen
can hear
screen
you.
the whole hour we've talked.
Oh wow. But I sorry about that, but that's the technology. I don't know why it does that either. But at least everyone's here. They're hearing us. That's beautiful. Yeah, another one of your readers here, I presume, Drew. He must be have read Crybaby. It is an excellent book. We are now just talking briefly about the writing process, different things that we're working on, and yeah. So the 90-day challenge that I was mentioning, I'm glad I did that because I haven't been doing things every single day because of different things, but starting this week, I'm going to try to be a little more consistent because seeing
Aim for
writers
aim
like
for a
you,
chapter. Aim for a chapter a week, Bill. A chapter a week, I think, gives you you're not under too much pressure. You know what I mean? Also, I read that the maximum sort of that a Substack chapter should be is about 1,800 words. I read that that's the perfect amount. Sometimes I go over,
sweet,
sometimes I
sweet
publish a
spot.
full short story, but I aim for 1,800 words. Um, and I do actually break my book down. I'll say, okay, it's 30 chapters. I want 30 chapters. I want the first act in the first 10 chapters, second act, the second 10, third act, last 10 chapters. I want the book to be 80,000 words, more or less. That's, a novel, a good novel, not just I don't want a thin book. I don't want to try and sell a thin book. I do want to, be able to say, okay, Crybaby is a monster book like Jaws, so it's the same length as Jaws. It's the same kind of, it'll go very nicely on your bookshelf next to Jaws. So
Mhm.
I always say, right, okay, I'm going to go for, let's say, 3,000, about 3,000 words. Try and get 3,000 words. Edit it down to maybe 2,000 words and publish that. And then, eventually I'm going to have 60,000 words, you know what I mean? And then, from there I'll try and I make some chapters longer. Some chapters are a tiny bit shorter, but not usually not. Like you've read Crybaby, you know that each chapter is pretty much the same or longer. If something big happens in one chapter, then I try and get it all in. I don't leave it for the next time. And I think one chapter a week is perfect. Aim for one chapter a week on your Substack. I also get people saying, I don't want 5 emails a day off you, Mark. I love reading your work, but I don't want like 5 emails a day. I don't want too much. I don't want my inbox clogging up with this stuff. So that's another thing. I try to listen to that. I have known some people say to me on Substack, okay, I had 2 weeks off and I've had more paid subscribers than I have when I'm banging out a chapter a week. You know what I mean? I've had 10 paid I've taken 2 weeks off, come back and I've got 10 paid subscribers, because your work is always there. It's always there to be discovered. It doesn't have to be, I think Substack sends you an email the day after and says, right, 25% of your readers opened your story and blah, 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 and everything else. And then you think, oh, okay, that's done. But it's not really like that. Like a month later, you might have another 1,000 people have read your stories and things like that. So I think it works very well. Like there used to be this thing, I think it was called NaNoWriMo. NaNoWriMo. Do you remember that?
NaNoWriMo, where you write a
So,
novel in
yeah,
30 days,
yeah.
right?
And that
That's in November.
yeah, and that was to try and get you to write your novel. You know what I mean? In in
Have you
in
ever
in
done that?
one. No, but I don't need to because I do my own. I set my own deadline and stick to it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't really need that sort of that peer kind of we're all writing a novel together kind of a
Ah,
that push. Like I'm okay on my own. You know what I mean? I
yeah.
know what I can and can't do in a week, and yeah, also, like I say, if I think of a story before when I'm going to sleep at night, and then I think, oh, that's brilliant, then the next day I'll write it out. You know what I mean? I'll write it as much in its entirety as I can before the story kind of disappears. So I think if someone said to me, what's the most or the least I should write a week, I'd say well, aim for a chapter. Aim for a 2,000, 3,000 word chapter per week, and that's enough. If you can
Mhm.
do that, then within under a year, you're gonna have a full novel.
That's true.
And you don't really want to be putting yourself under pressure to write a novel in 3 months because I don't think it would be that good. You know what I mean? I don't think it would
Yeah,
be.
yeah. It's well, they break it down into
If you
different.
if you rush things, it can be a bit like I know I've walked away from stories for years and then come back to them and they're a lot better. They've had time to sort of
To gel.
yeah in your subconscious, and you know
Mhm.
what you're doing with them. There's a tendency, I think, to throw as much stuff into one story as possible, rather than sort of think, okay, maybe that's for the next book. You know what I mean? Or
Mhm.
maybe that's for the next sort of story as you go along. Whereas
Right.
if you've got a chapter a week, there are some weeks where I've always had a chapter with Crybaby. I've always managed to get a chapter out, but there were some weeks where I would say, okay, right, I'm going to write the chapter on Monday, then I'm going to edit it, then I'm going to do this and that, and then I'm going to line it up, schedule it for the Friday on the Wednesday. So then I've got 2 days off. Maybe I don't have the chapter even written until the Thursday, but then I go, oh, okay, I've got the finally. I know what's happening. Like you say, your characters have to talk to you, otherwise they're I don't know what they're like. NPCs in a computer game that are just there to sort of stand around and do things. Where
You
if you
brought
you
up a
know
good
you've written real characters, if they're not going to do what you expected them to do. If they take on a life of their own, that's
right.
when you've written a real character. Until then, it's not. It's just a sort of signpost in your book. You know what I mean?
And
Once the character,
that was another
well,
thing I was going to bring up that you said, why consistency is important, because if you're working on a story, I have found for me, if I'm not writing that story every day or I go a couple days or whatever, I start forgetting the characters, what's going on. It all becomes like a murk. It becomes a mirage or
yeah,
something.
yeah,
So that's why that's important too.
I
Um,
agree. It's very good to keep going, until your book's done. Because you don't want to be, like you say, you don't want to have to be thinking, oh, what happened last chapter? You know what I mean? It's
yeah.
been so long since I wrote it. You don't have the,
Mhm.
um, what's the word? You can't kind of carry on the action. You lose that dynamism. You lose the engagement that you had with where you are in your own world, in that world that you've created. I think
Mhm.
it's like you say, it's very important that you're not away for too long, because then you have to start again. Like you say, you've forgotten the characters, you've forgotten the situation. You're sort of, where was I? You know what I mean? In your own book. So no, I think it's very. I'll tell you this, right, Bill. I've never lost a night's sleep. I've never struggled getting to sleep at night since I became a writer. I've never suffered from insomnia, because I can literally put my head down and say, right, I'm going to think about where I'm going next in my story, and I'm asleep in 10 minutes. You know what I mean? That's the beauty of being a writer, is you've got your own worlds to inhabit. You know what I mean? And I think that's a fantastic thing. And everybody
I
should try. Everybody should try writing their story. No one else can do it. I remember I have people coming up to me saying, "Oh, I'd love to be a writer. I've got this idea for a book. It's about a cat. It could be about whatever." And I always say to them, don't tell me about it. Go and write it. Only you
I
can write it. You know what I mean?
only you can write it with your character and your personality.
Yeah.
And I think, uh, at this point, we've been talking a while. We covered a lot of ground, I feel. Mr. Mark Watson again with his book Crybaby. Show us one more time there. Check it out on Amazon. This is our weekly meeting that we're going to have as Vault of the Supernatural. I am keeping it open to everybody, the Readers Club. Hope you all will check us out next week. Normally, I think I have this time scheduled for one. We just went a little later because Mark had to take care of a few things, which is fine. Uh, and we went a little over on time today, which is also fine. Um, but
Well, I've had a blast talking to you. If you'd like me to come back on at any time, I'm more than happy to. I hope I've inspired a few writers out there to you know
I
to
hope
to
so too.
to
You
move
inspired
forward.
this writer. You inspired this writer to get
I,
his tail to the keyboard.
Bill, I
You
can't
know.
thank you enough for buying my book. I can't thank you enough.
Oh, you're
Thank you, and for enjoying it as well. That's why we do it. You know what I mean? That's If you've got one person reading your book and enjoying it, that's all you need. That's all you need.
exactly, exactly, and it's a really good book, and I'm sure others will, uh, get it too. And yes. Oh, you too, Robes. Thank you for all your engagement, and thank you for listening. Robes, we'll have another meeting next Tuesday. I mean, not Tuesday, next Sunday at what did I say, 1 o'clock p.m. Arizona time. I'll try to get a post out on that between today and tomorrow. Uh, oh no, we won't have one next Sunday. I just forgot. Work invited me to a baseball game, so we'll have it the following week. Yeah, so we won't have any Sunday meetings next week, but the following Sunday we will. And I hope you guys will come. I hope you enjoyed this. I will put the post out shortly. Please engage and tell me what you think. Mr. Mark, thank you for coming. It was a joy talking with you today and
It's been a
you
pleasure,
sharing
sir.
your expertise and opinions and your process. And of course, your wonderful book. Um,
Bill,
everyone,
can I ask you one last favour?
yeah,
When you finish reading it, would you mind leaving a little review on Amazon if you enjoyed it?
I it's in my head already. It's in my
Thank
head
you.
already. I know you asked me, and I definitely will, for sure.
Thank you very much, Bill.
All
Thank
right,
you.
guys. Thank you, Mr. Mark. You have a great day, great night, and see you
Cheerio.
all guys soon. Bye-bye now.
Thank you, sir. Bye bye.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.